What is up, YouTube? I'm Devon DaVinci, leader of the Renaissance crew, and you're watching DaVinci Reacts. Today I got another Geography Now video for you guys, and this is an old one. For those of you that don't know anything about Geography Now, they do videos on nations, different information about countries, geography, demographics, things like that. And they've been doing it in alphabetical order since they started. They go from A to Z. Right now they're on Q, so obviously Canada's probably an older video. So some of the quality might not be the same as some of the newer videos that they make, but I'm here for the information, not the quality. Now, Canada is a country that I'm curious about because, well, I just want to know exactly what the differences are between Canada and America, or Canada and United States, because we're very similar. The thing I love about like Europe and Africa and Asia and countries like that is because every single country you go to, like, you can go from one country to the very next, and people are so different. Like, cultures are so different. The customs and traditions are so different. History is so different. And America and Canada, we share a lot of the same history. Both of us were British colonies. I'm not sure exactly how Canada got its freedom, now that I think about it, like independence. I'd have to look more into it. It's probably some obvious stuff. I never once claimed to be smart in my videos, so you can't sit here and be like, oh, you should know that. No, the hell I shouldn't. I will look it up, though. I'm willing to learn. It just never clicked until just now. Like, wait a minute, how did they get their independence exactly? But yeah, I want to learn more about Canada, and like I said, I want to try to learn more about other countries as well, because I want to get the traditions with every single country that's separate. So whenever I do videos on Europe, I love getting feedback from you guys about what your country's like, because usually the very next country next to you is vastly different. Being in America, it's tough to, like, we don't travel much because besides Mexico, you have Canada, which is almost the exact same thing, except friendlier, and they have healthcare, and people aren't as crazy. I think the reason for that is because they don't have the heat that America has, because that probably explains why Florida, Texas, and parts of California and stuff like that are batshit crazy. But whatever, let's jump into this and see what it has to offer. There will be a link for Geography Now at the end of this video that you can click on, go to their channel, subscribe to them, watch all their other stuff. And at this point, watch the original video. Please go watch the original video if you like their content, so you can show them some support. They can make some ad revenue, which will allow them to continue to fund the projects that we enjoy and make more videos and stuff like that. So let's get into it. I thought I clicked it. I was wrong.
Here at Geography Now, we got over 40 people that emailed us to help out with this episode from Canada. So without further ado, here comes the Canada episode.
It's time to learn geography now!
Hey Geograpeeps, I'm your host Barbie. A lot of people sometimes have trouble distinguishing between Americans from the US and Canadians. Here's a little analogy. Americans are kind of like teenage boys. They're opinionated, energetic, and confident, whereas Canadians are kind of like teenage girls. They'll be polite to you to your face, but then they'll talk crap behind your back. That being said, let's see if we can dissect the flag. The flag consists of a red field with a white square in the middle. In the middle of the entire flag lies a single 11-pointed red maple leaf. Red symbolizes the sacrifice during both world wars, and the white symbolizes the peace, tranquility, and neutrality of the country. The maple leaf has historically been a symbol of Canada for centuries, even during British rule. Some Canadians will tell you the 11 points symbolize the provinces, and the last one being for the territories, but that's not really true. That's just kind of how the leaf looks. Also keep in mind, Quebec would much rather fly this flag instead of the maple leaf, but we'll discuss more about that in
I was about to pause it, but yeah, that answer.
Alright, so Canada is huge. It's the second largest country in the world, so it's pretty safe to say that you can bet that there's going to be a lot of interesting things when it comes to administrative divisions. First of all, Canada is located on the North American continent, right above the United States, bordered by 3 oceans, the Atlantic, the Arctic, and the Pacific.
The only country that can rival Russia when it comes to just balls to the wall cold. No other country can say that they understand what Russia goes through other than Canada. Well, I guess like Norway, Scandinavian countries, Greenland, maybe Iceland, but
American continent right above the United States, bordered by 3 oceans,
It's a very
the Atlantic,
small,
the Arctic, and the Pacific on all 3
exclusive
sides.
club.
The country stretches over 6 time zones and is divided into 10 provinces. Yes, people, Newfoundland and Labrador are together one province, and 3 territories in the north, the capital of Ottawa being in the province of Ontario. Ooh, now let's have some fun. Now, the thing is, Canada's domain is lavished with sovereignty enigma and semi-autonomous wonder. First of all, let's talk about the border. At over 8,800 kilometers or 5,500 miles, with thousands of markers along the way, Canada and the US have the world's longest border between any 2 countries. Things are a little tame on the east
Also
coast,
the
except
most
for that one
friendliest.
island they have a dispute with Denmark over, and that one other island within kayaking distance that France refuses to let go of, until you get to the Quebec-Vermont border, and things get a little messed up when you reach Derby Line and Stansted. Since the town was built before modern-day borders were properly established, the town has a variety of houses, businesses, and buildings that lie directly on the border. Haskell Free Library even marks the border in its reading rooms and has an entrance for people on the US side and the Canada side. People of each country must enter on their side, and if they exit on the opposite country, they must stay on the sidewalk and report to the customs office. Failure to do so and stepping on the road can result in arrest. And this delightfully accidental slab of confusion, known as the Northwest Angle, that belongs to Minnesota, mostly owned by the Ojibwe tribe, situated on the Lake of the Woods, where you can find the reassuringly perfect getaway spots, Massacre Island and Little Massacre Island. The rest of the border.
You want to give an explanation for the name of those islands, bruh? Are we just going to jump past that? So no need to explain why it's called Massacre Island at all. Maybe the lack of an explanation is all we really need. Maybe we don't want to know why it's called Massacre Island. Maybe that's what I'm getting from this.
You can find the reassuringly perfect getaway spots, Massacre Island and Little Massacre Island. The rest of the border tries as best as it can to cut straight on the 49th parallel, even though it zigzags a little bit, and 4 airports have runways that either straddle or are exactly parallel to the border. Somewhere around 80% of Canadians live within 100 miles or 160 kilometers to the border of the US, and the further north you go, things just get a little kind of fuzzy and neglected.
In that regards, Canada is very much like Australia. Like, they just have parts of their country where nobody just touches. Like, we just pretend it doesn't exist. Don't even go there. That's the shadow area where you are never to go. You hear me, Simba? Never go there.
They still have a little bit of trouble integrating the rest of the land the further up you go. There are only 2 main highways that lead to the Yukon and Northwest Territories from the south, whereas there are virtually no roads leading to any of the provinces or territories into none of it. The only way to get into none of it is to either fly or take a boat. I mean, technically you could walk across the border, but that would suck. Speaking of none of it, Canada has the most northerly inhabited place in the world. Alert Canada, a perpetually icy, frozen, desolate settlement typically operated by as few as 5 people year-round. Functioning as both as a militaristic station and a seasonal research facility. Now, the one thing you have to know about Canada's administrative divisions is that it all kind of constitutionally fits together until you get to Quebec. Although Quebec is still considered a province of Canada, they've made it very clear in the past that they have a strong sense of Quebecois nationalism that many even take to the separatist extreme. Nonetheless, many of Canada's divisions and functions are heavily influenced by the landscape, such we will discuss in.
So Quebec is kind of like the Texas of Canada. They're that area that chances are it probably has like a lot of people. It has a little bit of significance, and they let it get to their heads. So they think like they're their own country now. They can, if they wanted to get independence, they can do that and just run like a country. They're like that little brother that thinks that they can do big boy things, but they're just not quite there. You know they're not there, but they like to talk themselves up a lot. Of course, I don't know. I'm just saying as a joke.
Okay, so once again, Canada is huge and often referred to as the Great White North. However, not all of Canada is a chilly Arctic tundra. First of all, Canada's physical features are built with a strange yet complementary mix of geological and meteorological, yes, that's a word, meteorological facets. Looking at Canada, one of the most notable features that sticks out would have to probably be the Hudson Bay, the 2nd largest bay in the world after the Bay of Bengal, and the largest bay that freezes over in winter. This bay provides a drainage basin that hydrates about half of the entire country and a little bit of the northwest of the US. The strange thing is that the Hudson Bay actually sits on a gravitational anomaly in which gravity here is actually a little bit lower than the rest of the planet's average. It has to do with some kind of sciencey reason about ground convection and ice melt rebound, yada yada yada. Hey guys, want to lose some weight? Try the new workout and diet trend, Hudson 90X. Our diet and workout plan includes
just moving
going to the Hudson Bay! No, but
Just
seriously, almost nobody lives along the Hudson Bay. It's almost impossible to build roads with the rugged, splotchy rock landscape with too many ponds and lakes getting in the way for any straight highway to be built. Speaking of which, at around 2 to 3 million, it's actually speculated that around 60% of all the world's lakes and about 30% of all the world's fresh water can be found in Canada. Tap water can actually have better quality than bottled water.
So when the water wars start, if that ever becomes a thing, Canada will all of a sudden immediately become like the world's biggest superpower. That's why Canada is so damn friendly. Like America, we like to throw ourselves around like, yeah, we got the greatest military, this, that, and the other. But Canada's just waiting. They're just sitting in the back way like, yeah, you think you have it now, but over time you will get thirsty. And there won't be much to drink. Then who you will turn to?
Canada. This has to do largely with the domineering freckly crevice zone that takes up about half of the entire country, the Canadian Shield. The Canadian Shield is a wide plateau of exposed Precambrian igneous rock that harbors little soil and vegetation, but offers a glory field of mining. Canada has some of the world's richest deposits of metal ores like nickel, gold, silver, and copper. 2/3 of all the cesium in the world comes from one mine in Manitoba, Burnick Lake. Fun little side note, Canada has the world's largest third-order lake island. That's an island in a lake on an island in a lake on an island. Located on Victoria Island, this little squiggly 4-acre rock was discovered by map nerds who scrolled Google Maps just a couple of years ago. The island has no name and has most likely never had anyone step foot on it. I mean, I'll do it if nobody else will, but I might need a corporate sponsorship. I'm looking at you, Aunt Jemima. Canada also has 2 of the top 10 largest impact craters on Earth. Sudbury Crater in Ontario and Manicouagan in Quebec with its almost perfectly circular imprint flooded and now a reservoir that you can see from space. Okay, there's a lot more in this section, so I'm just gonna kind of rapid fire throughout all the rest of the facts. About 40% of the country is covered in forests and about 1/10 of the world's forests are in Canada. Over 60% of the world's polar bears live in Canada. The Bay of Fundy has the world's highest tidal range with the highest point being over 16 meters. Niagara Falls looks cool. Mount Thor has the world's highest vertical drop. Quebec alone supplies about 70% of the world's maple syrup,
like
and
the
they
spot
actually
you
have a
go
maple
to
syrup
get the
reserve with
Soul
over
Stone.
222,000 barrels of maple syrup. Prince Edward Island has a weird natural phenomena in which the sands on the beach make this weird squeaking noise when you step on it. Here's some footage.
The sand is farting.
The largest inland lakes besides the ones shared with the US on the Great Lakes are the Great Bear and Great Slave Lakes, named after the slavey people. No, I'm not talking about slaves, I'm talking about the slavey people. There's a difference. One we'll discuss in
Demographics.
Canada is one of those places where everybody kind of fits in, but there's always a little bit of gossip going around every corner. First of all, Canada has about 35 million people, making it one of the least densely populated places on Earth.
That's
about 3/4 of whom
interesting.
identify as white. Asians make up about 14%. Natives and Aboriginal peoples make up a surprising 5%. Blacks at 3%, Latinos at 2%, and the rest are just kind of everything else. Now again, Canada's population takes another turn because in addition to ethnicity, Canada also has linguistic groups. About 1 out of every 3 Canadians either speaks French fluently or understands enough to get by. The whole Quebec thing kind of plays a paramount role in Canada's societal operations. They kind of have to work really hard to make sure that this one province cooperates. Also, keep in mind, Quebec isn't the only place in Canada where French is spoken. Communities in Ontario, Manitoba, and especially the Maritime Province like Newfoundland, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia have huge communities of French speakers. The difference though is that these French speakers have an even deeper level of segregated culture. Many people in the Maritime Provinces have a unique Acadian French culture that differs from Quebec. Fun side note, the Cajun people of the US in Louisiana are generally descended from the Acadian people that were expelled and deported from these provinces by the British in the 1700s. Back then, the Louisiana
That's
Purchase
interesting.
didn't happen yet, so all of this area was still French. Yada yada yada, they came over and invented gumbo.
Gumbo,
so that's
yes.
why Cajuns speak French, America.
Gumbo. If you don't know gumbo, look that shit up. Look up recipes. Try it. I promise you will love it. If you like spicy food, gumbo is my mouth is starting to water. Gumbo is the goddamn best.
Was still French. Yada yada yada, they came over and invented
man.
gumbo. So that's why Cajuns
had
speak
gumbo in a
French,
while.
America, because Canada! Nonetheless, about 1 out of every 5 Canadians was born outside of Canada, making Canada pretty diverse, especially by US entertainment quota standards. Alright, toss in a black guy, an Asian girl, why not throw in one of those Indian guys? Those people are trending these days, but make sure the lead is a handsome, attractive, rugged white guy. And this is where I want to make a Geography Now spotlight. Canada has a somewhat shrouded community of under-highlighted individuals that typically go unnoticed, even by Canadians. Sure, we can talk about Toronto, Vancouver, heck, even Calgary has some chips on the table, but nobody really gives these guys a chance. So Yukon, Northwest, none of it. I'm putting you guys on display. Altogether, the population of all three of these territories is only about 110,000 people, making it the most sparsely populated area of all of Canada. First of all, Indigenous peoples of Canada number about 850,000 and altogether have about 630 reservations speckled throughout the entire country. The largest reserves are located in these territories. Indigenous people in Canada are generally categorized into three separate groups: the First Nations, the Métis, and the Inuit. The Métis are mixed race Indigenous, the First Nations are generally southern tribes that typically live in forested areas, and the Inuit are straight up Arctic folk. Here's how you can kind of distinguish the three territories. Yukon is predominantly white. The Northwestern Territories has a lot of First Nation tribes, like the Slavey people who can be found close to the Great Slave Lake, although many of them prefer to be called the Dene. Cool side note, the Navajo tribe in the US to some extent trace their heritage to these people. See how everything is connected, people? Finally, we reach Nunavut, which is almost exclusively Inuit. The Northwest Territories and Nunavut actually used to be part of the same territory, but then in 1999, Nunavut was like, I ain't having none of it, and
I was
became
about
its
to
own
make
thing.
that joke,
No, but
but
seriously, Inuit culture is one of the most underrated
Just
and
seemed too
culturally
easy.
fascinating things you'll ever encounter. They speak Inuktitut, a cousin of the Greenlandic language. They can pretty much understand each other, and they have their own written script that you can find on street signs and traffic posts. They have a long history of vibrant traditions, rituals, games, music, and
I think
even
I learned that
cuisine.
from the
If
Carl
you ever
Pilkington
come here, make
episode.
sure you try some whale blubber and watch a throat game
Idiot
song,
abroad.
which looks like this. What a great way to make friends. Which takes us to... Canada is friends with everyone. The end.
pretty much.
Nah, okay, let's elaborate just a little bit more. Okay, so Canada does kind of typically maintain a foreign policy that does encourage diplomacy outreach to pretty much every country that they can grab at. Heck, they even had good ties with Cuba after the US put an embargo on them. Nonetheless, Canada's relations kind of typically shadow those of the US. Allies with the same allies, and opponents with the same opponents. I mean, have you seen the movie Argo? First of all, Canada is not only part of the Commonwealth, but the Commonwealth realm. Yes, there's a difference. So in general, they pretty much get along with everything that was once part of the British Empire. Then you get the Francophone countries that also gel well with Canada as well. The funny thing is, although the US complains about the immigration procedures of Mexicans into the US, Canada is actually trying to coerce and entice Mexicans to come in. With its low birth rate and a need for a bigger workforce to assist the aging population, Canada has relaxed its immigration and visa policies in order to gain skilled workers, and specifically from the Central American regions.
Because immigration is a good thing. I know I just said something that's going to strike up a really big conversation in the comment sections, but I did that intentionally because I like causing chaos.
Immigration and visa policies in order to gain skilled workers, and specifically from the Central American regions. Flyers and advertisements are spread all over Mexico encouraging them to move in. Of course, when it comes to those closest to them, Canada does have their top pick: the United States. Some say Canada is like the little brother of the US, some say it's like the best friend, but in all honesty, Canada and the US are kind of like teenage high school sweethearts. Canadians and Americans have been there for each other since day one. The US is the largest export and business partner of Canada and shares the closest diplomatic ties both nationalistically and militaristically. The difference between Canadians and Americans, though, is that Americans gained their independence by force, whereas Canadians by diplomacy. American immigration policy is like a melting pot where people are kind of expected to assimilate, whereas Canadian foreign policy is kind of like a mosaic. People are encouraged to be distinct culturally. In all honesty, though, they are kind of like a cute little teenage boyfriend-girlfriend couple. Sometimes they like to poke fun at each other, but at the end of the day, they're totally dating and they're totally making out with each other in the back of the movie theaters. In conclusion, Canada, you little sweet cheek you. I'll pick you up at 7. We're going out for some pancakes on that island, in a lake, on an island, in a lake, on an island. Stay tuned. Cape Verde is coming up next.
Well, Canada, my northern brothers and sisters, if you're here and you want to join the Renaissance crew, welcome. You're always free to, come along. I would like to learn more about Canadian history. He just said that Canada became independent through diplomacy, which makes sense. I don't ever remember hearing about some type of revolution or whatever else. You can leave it to Canadians to, gain their independence through diplomacy. I mean, that just makes sense. I would like to learn more about their history as well. Because even like with the United States, for example, people like to say we don't necessarily have a culture because we're just like a bunch of people from other places brought together. But we do, in a way, have our own culture. Like a lot of a lot of stereotypes about other countries are usually like stem from the United States. Like the idea of like Chinese food, for example, pretty much comes from the United States. Like chop suey, like all the traditional dishes that people would associate with Chinese dishes, for the most part, come from the United States. Like the modern ways that people eat like pizza and spaghetti and stuff like that come from the United States. Hamburgers, things like that come from the United States. Notice how I'm talking about food. We're very innovative when it comes to food. And food and fighting. Food and fighting are two things that we're very good at. But yeah, we need other countries out there to help us as far as like culture and entertainment and things. Well, we're pretty good at entertainment too. Anything that involves us not getting off our ass for any other reason besides fighting, or any other reason other than fighting. What was I trying to say? Anything that will get us off our ass that doesn't involve fighting. That's what I meant to say. We suck at. So we need people out there to help us out with, you know, some of the more interesting aspects of the world. You know, when it comes to exploring the world and things like that, those belong to other countries. But when it comes to learning how to put a particular type of food into a deep fryer, goddamn it, America is your place. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. Like I said, I will have a link for geography now at the end of this video, so be sure to click it. It'll pop up right around the last 30 seconds of the video. So if you don't see it now, just scroll till you get to the end. It'll pop up over there somewhere. And I look forward to seeing more comments from you guys about countries, especially if you're Canadian. Let me know all about Canada. Like I said, particular cultures in certain areas, because like in America, we have the South is completely different than other parts of the country. Like he said, in Louisiana, they have like the Creole people. I've spent a lot of time in Louisiana. That's where I got my gumbo fixation from. That's a particular thing. Florida, it's its own goddamn bizarro world country. California, the Midwest, all these areas have different, not necessarily like full-on cultures, but they have their own like traditions and stuff. So if Canada has anything like that, be sure to let me know. Let me know if Quebec happens to be as batshit crazy as I assume it is. Any territory that thinks that their own country always tends to be a little bit on the wacky side. So let me know how that works out. And I will look forward to seeing you guys on the next video. I don't know what the next reaction to or the next country I'm going to react to in Geography Now is, but some people have left some recommendations, so I might check those out. Anyway, I'm Devon DaVinci. Hopefully you've just been a little more enlightened. I look forward to seeing you guys in a future video. Until then, I'm going to give you the deuces, and I'm signing out. Deuces.